It was fun meeting everyone on Zoom, and I know I took advantage of the situation by having a little bit too much fun. It was random, and I was interviewing you, and it wasn't quite tidy, so the time went on, right? It went on a little bit too long. But that was the only time we do that because that's the beginning. And sometimes I find students will speak up more when they feel comfortable. And if I'm the craziest one in the room, it adds more to the content of what you produce. And if you listen back, many students showed a lot about their integrity, their values, who they are as human beings. It was quite exciting. And I'm always looking for commonality. Like, what do we have in common? I'm a lot older than you, 45 years for sure. Not for everyone, but for most. And so my experiences vary. But what you have for your experiences incredibly valuable. And like I said, I give you a lot of credit for taking this class. All right, the next speech in the news. There is a handout for it. There's an introduction, a body, and conclusion for guidelines. The introduction says to greet your audience and tell us what you're talking about. And what are you talking about? Something that is either current events or public information, a story that you heard or you read. It could be in the newspaper or in a magazine. It could be something from a podcast or something that you saw in social media that you would tell a friend. You know, we all get information constantly. Sometimes we have information overload, but every so often there is something that appeals to you and you might find yourself sharing it. So this week, think about that. Listen up. Like, well, that's a good story I could do my speech on. This is an icebreaker. I'm looking at your delivery. So find something that you feel connected to. And as I said, the first step, introduction. Tell us your name and what your story is about. And then your body would paraphrase or put it into your own words, like you were retelling the story to a friend. And then the conclusion, which would be a summation, not so much of what you said, but why you chose this. What's your opinion? Why'd you bring this to our attention? And you might find that this presentation, the introduction might be just like 30 seconds, if even shorter. And then the body could be the bulk of your time. And the conclusion, because you have a lot to say, actually could be a little longer. So I find that in the news, the balance isn't always like short introduction, long body, short conclusion. And this is totally connected to written communication. Every time you write an essay, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're leading your in this case, your listeners with you. When you're writing an essay, you're leading your readers with you. Of course, in an essay, written communication, you have the paragraph structure, you have your spelling, you have your punctuation, and so all those tools to really further communicate your message to your receiver, your encoding, right, as they said in chapter 1. But in oral communication, you have the sound of your voice, you have your pacing, you have your energy, you have your visual, and you have all that plus. Some students find it actually easier to do a presentation rather than a paper. It gives you a lot more freedom and it's a broader discipline. So have some fun with it. And there's nothing wrong with saying when you're toward your conclusion in an oral presentation, in conclusion or in summary, or I'm going to leave you with this last thought. All those transition phrases that when I taught English for years and years, I would take my red pen and cross them all out. Like, don't have to say that. The reader can see this. In oral communication, you, as the speaker, are controlling the pacing. And I know how hard this is to do on Zoom. But what we'll do not next week, but the week after when we resume our Zooms, or that's alliteration, isn't it? Resume our Zooms. We'll start off on time. I will not take attendance. I will just say hi everyone who would like to be first, and I will be the gatekeeper, keeping them rolling. And we'll do one right after another. As far as feedback is concerned, well, you'll get my feedback because I'll be grading these. I don't grade them necessarily that day, but within that week afterwards I will, and I'll definitely give some specific feedback if I find that there's something you should be working on. Absolutely. And it's usually like minor things. It's like, oh, slow down a little bit, or make sure you give us an introduction. Some students get so excited that they forget the introduction. They just start talking. And I say, no, 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 slow it down, slow it down. And however you practiced it, you can put your notes on note cards or on pieces of paper. I often use two pieces of paper, and I write down my outline. I might write out my introduction word for word. And I might even put, hi, I'm Joyce Fernandez, and today I'm speaking about. And then I make a bullet points of my outline. And then my conclusion, I might write that out a little bit too. When I'm presenting, my notes are my discipline. They're my preparation to get me ready to present. Sometimes I find I don't even use them once the day comes or the moment comes, but that's the best practices to have notes with you. So that's going to be it's not next week, but the week after on Zoom. We will do it orderly. They're 2 to 5 minutes. We will not take up more than 5 minutes per person, and we'll go one-on-one. So I give you feedback as I grade it, right, within the next week. But your peers, your audience, can give you feedback with the chat feature. And I noticed last week that some people used the chat feature, some people didn't, and you were not required to use the chat feature, but it's really a good feature to use. There's nothing more fulfilling that after you finish a presentation and you look at the chat, and even if one person said, way to go, or good job, or gee, that's interesting, or I agree with you, or add to the discussion, right? And you can do that on the chat, and that's your world. And I'm thrilled when I see students utilizing it, because otherwise we don't have feedback. Even in the classroom, we do not have time for feedback. It's exactly what happens as we're doing on Zoom. It's one speech after another without a lot of commentary in between. So do not feel slighted or upset if we don't have big, broad discussions after your presentation. It's nature of a public speaking class. But I'm looking forward to it. So think about what you might want to do for your In the News. And I hope you're having a wonderful week, a wonderful weekend, and thinking pleasant thoughts. Keep up with the discussion boards, and I'm enjoying looking at what you say. Now that I've met some of you and I look back at your words at some of the discussion board posts, it really does fill my heart. It's so great to meet you. I'm really happy to meet you. I think you can tell. But when it comes to the Zoom In the News, I'm very disciplined. You will be too, and I'm sure you're going to like it because it's going to go one right after another. And we'll see democratically who needs to leave early, who needs this. We'll try to give everyone a shot. What I did do was I wrote down who went last the last time, the first time we met. And so I'll often ask those students, do you want to be first this time? Because you had to wait for so long. There's always someone going to be at the end, and there's always someone in the beginning. But if we work as a team, we will feel like we're in it together. I will see you not next week, but the week after on Zoom.